Slipshod here, and today I'm going to be doing a shooter-oriented Steam controller overview, looking at my Call of Duty 2 lefty bindings, so called because not only are the grenade and special grenade options reversed from what would be the normal input, but also I've assimilated the left and right triggers into just the left trigger. And to take a look at that, obviously I've got firing the weapon as the full pull action and aiming down the sight as the soft pull action. And for the soft pull trigger style, I have hip fire normal. I used to have it on hip fire aggressive, but I found that when I needed to hip fire occasionally, I would instead be aiming down the sights, and by that point, usually, especially in Black Ops 3 as well, usually you'd be dead because you can't rapidly aim as fast as you can with the with hip firing. So basically, you need to set it to an amount that means that whenever you want to hit a certain input, whether it's aim down the sight first or just the full pull action, and you need to make sure that the option you've selected allows you to do that whenever it is that you want to be doing either option. They have also added a hipfire exclusive option very recently in an update. Not too much use as far as I can tell, although obviously I haven't played every shooter that is in existence, so I don't know whether some games that would be an option or if you change the actual bindings of the buttons. However, for me it seems very niche, and I don't think I will be utilising it in the near future. But obviously it's something to be aware of just in case you're looking to be a bit more creative with your bindings. Obviously the soft pull point I've set it to about half of what it normally is, just to make it a little bit easier to activate the soft pull if I need. Obviously having a little bit less heavy pressure on it means that your other inputs are easier to achieve or more accurate as such. The trigger analog output only matters in games that actually recognise X inputs. Otherwise, the trigger analog output doesn't do anything at all. In Call of Duty 2, Modern Warfare 2, for example, I could set it to either of those and it wouldn't make a jot of difference because the game doesn't know what a left trigger and a right trigger actually is. Obviously, you can change the trigger range start and end. Don't think you really need to unless you're determined to do it. Then the trigger response curve can be useful. For me, I prefer a 1-to-1, but obviously, depending on your body geometry, you may not want to have linear. You may want it to have one of the other settings. Personally, I think linear is fine. That's what it will be on pretty much every other controller, especially the DualShock 4 or 3 or whatever it is now, and the Xbox One controller and the Xbox 360 controller. Haptic intensity for the triggers, I don't think you need that set. Well, to be fair, you could have it off, although I think it is better to have at least low on it. I have medium, doesn't make too much of a difference. You can also do hold to repeat, which is turbo, but again, not necessary. And sometimes you're likely to get called out for hacks if you're doing it, so I wouldn't necessarily try it. Then next up, I'll just mention the back buttons. Obviously I've got reload on the left side and switch weapon on the right side just for convenience. Get some of the main options, especially in Call of Duty 2. It wasn't very complicated as a game, which to be honest I prefer. I'm sure a lot of other people do compared to the dross we have now, but whatever. Then obviously you can actually swap the analog stick and the D-pad over. It depends whether you want to get used to having kind of like a trackpad style analog stick. Personally, I prefer an analog stick for movement, but that's not to say that you would. Obviously got very simple bindings for this one. Stance up, stance down. I've already got those bound to other things anyway. It's just because there isn't that many options to put in there. And then I'll have a look at the analog stick itself. Obviously I've got it set as a directional pad, but that's just so I can get the click action as a stick. I think you can actually change it to require a click. No, you can't. Because on the directional pad, you cannot set it to require a click when you do that. Whereas with the button pad, you can set it to require a click or not for any of the directions. However, you don't get the actual stick click itself if you do that, whereas with a directional pad you do. So I would suggest using it as a directional pad layout. And another interesting thing to note, primarily for games where you actually have to set it as the WASD keys rather than just set it as like joystick move, for example. Most modern games will recognise a controller anyway, so joystick move would be fine there. Obviously, I'm looking at Call of Duty 2, which doesn't recognise X input, so I'll have to use a directional pad. And you can, if you set it in game to use the up, left, down, right arrows, then you can also navigate the menus considerably easier, because obviously otherwise you have to be actually sat at your PC or laptop or whatever in order to move it through the menu, that is. For the layout of directional pad, I've got it set as analog emulation. I prefer that, and radial with overlap also works perfectly fine. For directional movement, really, radial without overlap isn't going to work. It's not ideal anyway, and crossgate most certainly not. Diagonals are very, very key in shooters, I find, at least. Then obviously you've got click action set as left shift, which is melee / steady sniper. Also, you get mode shifting as well. Get haptics intensity, but again, I wouldn't bother to change it personally. I don't need it on the stick. The whole point of using the analog stick itself is that you know the sort of rotation or the orientation of your movement anyway. So haptics intensity can be off. It doesn't matter. I have it set to low or whatever. Obviously, I've got quite a high dead zone. I might actually just lower that a bit. That just means you've got to move the stick a certain amount before any input is actually registered. And personally, I prefer to have as little dead zone as possible, although you'll notice that quite often if you set the dead zone too low, you will get stick drift, and that's due to inbuilt variances with the actual controllers themselves and how it registers the inputs. So you don't want it too low, but you don't want it too high either. Now, on the advanced settings, you've got for the analog emulation at least, you have pulse time and active percent. You want those pretty much as low as possible as well to make it as smooth as possible. And you can also do outer ring binding radius, but when you've got it set as a directional pad for the analog stick and it's basically movement, I would not suggest having an outer ring binding, otherwise your movement could very well be compromised. Although saying that, when it's set as directional pad, it isn't quite being seen as an analog emulation, as an analog input into the game. So an outer ring binding won't necessarily affect it, because as in the directional inputs won't necessarily be speeding up if you have to push it right to the edge of the range of motion. So after that, I will have a look at the gyro. Now, personally, I don't use it that much. I have it set on this game because there's an option for lean left and lean right. In Modern Warfare 2, there isn't that option, so I don't have the gyro on, and same for Black Ops 3. Although some people do prefer to have the gyro on, and it can actually be very effective. I've seen people use it to good effect. Mainly when using it as a mouse or a mouse joystick in some games that allow that input. With the mouse also you get the gyro lean left and lean right binding as well anyway. That would be possible to have the same bindings I've already got, plus have up and down as well, and the other options with the gyro, but I don't personally use them. They can be very useful in shooters where accuracy is more of a very, very refined skill, like Counter-Strike Go, for example, or Arma, or even Squad now as well. Call of Duty such doesn't have that sort of learning curve for accuracy as such. It's pretty much if you've got the center of the screen on someone, you'll be hitting them. Whereas with Counter-Strike, you've got to have a little bit more finesse with your actual shooting as such. Obviously you can set the gyro to be enabled by when you're touching the trackpad, or you can set it to be always on. Obviously you've got left pad touch, right pad click, left pad click as well. Depends on your preference, on how you set it up. You could have it always on, but then you've got to be very wary about moving your hands around when you're playing the game. Obviously, when you've got it set to a directional pad, you don't get quite as many options as that, but I prefer that. And if you're going to set it as a directional pad also, you need to be wary of the dead zone. You need to set that quite low, because otherwise you're going to have to tilt your hands to 90 degrees either way in order to get the input to actually activate. Right, next one up, I'll have a look at the mouse. Now, I set it as a mouse because in these games, obviously, it doesn't recognise a joystick, so joystick camera or mouse joystick don't do anything in the game. But I actually prefer using it as a mouse because I find that the joystick options that they give a lot less sensitive, a lot less useful, really, and a lot less accurate, I find, as well. Because even with the mouse, you get the trackball mode, and later on, obviously, you get edge spin speed and edge spin radius as well, which can also change it. Now, I've got the sensitivity set right up, but in the game, it's actually very low, so it kind of evens out that. You could do it the other way around, wouldn't make too much difference, to be fair, but I do think you want to have as high sensitivity as possible while still remaining somewhat accurate. Although in Counter-Strike, for example, you would need it to have the sensitivity not necessarily low, but have it a lot lower than you would for Call of Duty, for example, because otherwise you're going to be aiming miles away from a person when you're trying to do recoil control and whatnot. And obviously they've given us a nice little graphic for the rotation now, which basically is, if you look at the arc of your thumb as you swipe across, so if you keep the base of your thumb still and swipe across the trackpad with your right thumb, for this example, obviously on the left trackpad it would be the other way around. Then you look at the arc of your thumb as you go across it and try and match up with the actual rotation graphic, and that will make quick swipes end up as pretty much as close to horizontal as they can be, rather than having it, you do it and it'll aim up at the sky or the floor, which is really not ideal in the heat of battle. Acceleration is again another option. You can use it. I prefer just to have it as a constant, so off, because obviously if you do it like this, if you do an accidental short and sharp movement, you could end up doing a full 180 or something rather than the slight movement that you intended. So I have that off, but it can be useful to have it on. Trackball mode, definitely very useful. I would suggest having that on, and I've set the trackball friction to low. Obviously, when you first do it, I would suggest medium. Although with this setup, your right thumb should remain on the trackpad at all times anyway. So the trackball mode isn't necessarily utilised all the time unless you need to quickly rotate around. But other than that, it can be useful, and I would recommend setting it up. Friction vertical scale is for the trackball friction. The trackball mode, and I think you want that pretty much as high as you can go. Mainly because otherwise, as I mentioned before, you'll be aiming at the ceiling or the floor if you do a quick swipe, and it's just not ideal. Although you can remove that, as in you can lower it, because in the advanced settings you get sensitivity vertical scale, and if you drop that down, then you get less vertical movement for the same horizontal movement. So that can offset that, although I would still put the friction vertical scale up quite high. As you'll notice, I've got haptics intensity to high. That's because I want to know exactly where my thumb is on the trackpad and get as much feedback from that as possible, since that is the primary objective of a shooter, either first person or third person. You can also do a touch binding. I wouldn't recommend that though. Then we have the trigger press mouse dampening. So you get quite a comprehensive list of options, with options for either trigger or both triggers, with soft pull dampening or soft/full pull dampening. Then combined with this option here, it allows you to reduce the sensitivity whenever your selected trigger options or option is engaged. Obviously, most games actually do this in-game for you. Other games have options that you can change. For example, Call of Duty doesn't have an option you can change with that, but it will automatically reduce the sensitivity when you're zoomed into the sights. Whereas with Counter-Strike, you can change the sensitivity if you wish. So you may not need it, or you may need it. It's up to personal preference, really. Then next up, we have smoothing. Obviously, you want to reduce that and keep it as low as possible, really. Same with filtering in the in-game settings. Obviously, having it higher does make it noticeably smoother. However, it massively increases input lag, which is not what you want with competitive first-person shooters. So, yeah, keep that as low as possible. Then we have the double tap binding. This isn't presses, it's actually just taps. And it can be quite useful if you run out of space with your other controller bindings. Obviously, I don't have one for this, but that's because Call of Duty 2 is not a particularly complex game. So yeah, obviously if you do that, you also probably want to reduce the double tap duration so that you don't accidentally activate it at a very inconvenient time. Also, you can do it to allow a double tap beep to notify you of it, but personally I think that's a bit of a distraction, so I wouldn't worry about that. Then we have the edge spin radius and edge spin speed. This is only really useful if you want to set it up as to imitate like an analog stick. And if your sensitivity is high enough, you won't be reaching the edge of the controller anyway, so personally I wouldn't worry about that too much, but it's nice to have the option if you need. Minimum movement threshold, you want to keep that as low as possible to make yourself as accurate as can be. And then alright, just have a look at the other trigger quickly. Obviously I have jump/stance up as the full pull action and stance down as the soft pull action. Now you may think that's the wrong way around, but in the older Call of Duty such as COD 2, drop shotting was a lot more important than jumping, whereas nowadays, especially with Advanced Warfare and Black Ops 3, where you have exosuits or bionic legs, jumping around, there's more verticality to it, so jumping is more important. So in Black Ops 3, for example, I have it the other way around, but in this and Modern Warfare 2, it's exactly the same as it is here. It's set to hip fire normal, just like the other trigger, just because I'm used to that. Obviously you could have it set to hip fire aggressive, but no reason to, for me at least. And the soft pull point is quite low down as well. And I think that is all the options that I need to cover. So the running order for the gameplay footage is going to be Call of Duty 2 first, obviously, followed by Modern Warfare 2, then Crysis 3, then Resident Evil 4. And I will have other gameplay videos up at a later date on my channel with the individual bindings for those games, but I'll be going into those bindings a lot more briefly than this.
Heads up, enemy UAV spotted. Friendly Predator missile incoming. Counter UAV is up. Enemy Harriers incoming! Friendly Predator missile incoming.
Harrier standing by.
Friendly Harriers inbound.
Target down.
UAV online.
Suggests. Fuck that. We're 100% goddamn positive the Tin Man is in this quadrant. Got a man down!
He's hunting us.
Weakness flash position. Give him a... Send reinforcements now! He's gonna kill me!
Is that all, stranger?